Nadja Swarovski. She was the first woman in the executive board of Swarovski.
Alexander McQueen popped up because he also had no financing. I was out to prove that women can do it all. I reached the mountaintop, and the climb was hard. Even people within the organization didn't believe that this could be doable. I had to convince the board to give me the financing. I remember I had a conference call with Boston Consulting when my daughter was 2 days old in the hospital. You know what? I should have just told them, really? I think you can wait 1 week. But instead, I wanted to prove I can do it all. And yes, I'm available. Of course, you can do it all. And suddenly, before I know it, my kids are grown up. And I actually wish I had.
Today we have an amazing woman and role model for the world. She graduated from the Southern Methodist School of Texas. She was the first woman in the executive board of Swarovski, founder of the Swarovski Foundation, and the COO and CMO of Really Wild Clothing, Nadja Swarovski. Nadja, what an honor. Welcome to the podcast and welcome to Gumstocks. How are you?
Well, Sebastian, it's so great to be here with you, and it is my honor. Thank you so much for asking me to be here. And I have to say, it was wonderful to have met you at Harvard at the beginning of the year. And I think it's just formidable what you're doing to create this platform of communication. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for your time, for being here. And also that was a special connection for me when I met you in Harvard, because I was like in a rush and you were like, no, 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 wait, like, wait, who are you? Where are you from? What's your name? And I was like, oh, that's amazing. It felt like genuine, so natural. And it was amazing. To start, we always ask a little bit. We want to hear in their own words how are they. So the first question today is gonna be, in your own words, who is Nadja Swarovski?
Okay, so I am me, myself, and I. And I've had that, to be honest with you, I've had a dilemma defining myself my entire life. But the person that you see here today, I guess, is a combination of, well, no, just factually speaking, I am half American, half Austrian. I grew up in Austria. I eventually finished high school in Massachusetts, which really led me down to Southern Methodist University because I didn't know too much about America. And I didn't really like what I saw in Massachusetts, but these people were complaining so much about the South. So I thought, let's explore the South. So Southern Methodist University was amazing. It was really, for me, totally going beyond my comfort zone. I did sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger when I arrived. I learned my English there. I had an incredible art history professor, which was my passion. I studied art history and foreign languages and Latin American studies, and I found myself at Sotheby's right after university in New York. And then from Sotheby's, thought I entered what I thought would be my dream job, namely working for Gagosian Gallery, which is, or back then certainly was the most renowned contemporary art gallery, and then eventually found my way into the family business of Swarovski. Um, but really, I have to say, having grown up as a half American, my mother is American and my father's Austrian, it was always a big question to define myself. Who am I? And that's why it was so nice to see you at Harvard. And I've seen, although Harvard is in America, there's so many international students, so I just have to jump and say, where are you from? The world is a small place. It is a melting pot. And the example of Harvard is so wonderful because it's really a coming together of intelligent, bright, young minds, as is the case with you and your colleagues, or Boston in general. Um, but so in any case, this is me. I worked for the family business for 26 years and then eventually left and have invested. And I'm really doing impact investing. So I'm investing in companies that have a positive impact on the environment or mankind. So I'm investing in a few tech companies, but as you mentioned, I've also invested in a clothing company called Really Wild. And that the reason why we invest in that company is because all the fabrics that they use comes or they come from Scotland, and everything is made with tweed or boucle, and the manufacturing methods are over 100 years old. They're very traditional, but they're very sustainable. And our ethos of investing is we're investing in craftsmanship in order to invest and protect cultural heritage. And I think in this day and age, in this digitized age, it's really important to protect and acknowledge what the cultural heritage is of so many different countries. So
That's
in a nutshell, we
100%.
can go into further detail.
To start, that one is an amazing anecdote. I have my notes here about when you arrived to the US. But you also, I wanted to ask you, how did it feel growing up? And you also told me that you were happy that no one in the US knew how to say your last name. You were so happy. You were Nadja S. How it
That,
feel growing up, like being under the loop, everybody knowing the family, knowing where your family coming from in Austria, and then coming to the US and being out of that loop.
yeah, it was amazing. And you know, the thing is, you just kind of grow up as you grow up, you don't know anything else, and you first think it's the norm. But then you realize actually maybe that is not the norm. And so basically my family is based in a small town outside of Innsbruck, and my father was in charge of manufacturing, and you know he was a fourth generation family member. I'm fifth generation, but Swarovski pretty much employed the majority of the surrounding neighborhoods, you know, and I think that is what put a bit of pressure, made things feel not so private as a child growing up because everyone knew the family, everyone knew where the factory was, you know, and everyone knew the name. And so there was automatically a stigma associated to you, whether it was good or bad, but people just would think, oh, Swarovski, you know, not Nadia Swarovski or Vanessa Swarovski, who was my sister. So it was really great actually to go abroad. And yes, as you mentioned, to go to America where people could not pronounce that name. And actually, also the name Swarovski was not really well known at that time, which is really the late 80s, because Swarovski has always supplied the jewelry stones to the industry. So we were a industry product. We were really focusing on business to business. We were not a consumer product. So therefore, there was no marketing behind a consumer name of Swarovski. But all of that is was to change during the time that, you know, I was then in the States. And
I would love
while I,
to dive deeper into that when you realize it's not like it's like a B2B, not being for consumers, because then you arrive and make an amazing change. But before, I want to see, you have lived and experienced many countries. You have lived in Hong Kong, you have lived in the US, you have lived in Austria, you have been around now in Scotland. uh, what's what's a superpower every immigrant has and he doesn't realize when someone arrives to a new country, a new language, a new culture, but he doesn't know it's a superpower he has.
well, I certainly appreciate the saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. You know, and yes, I did end up in Texas. And yes, people did say to me, oh my gosh, you're from Austria. You must have so many kangaroos. And instead
Crazy.
of really annoyed with it, I thought, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Actually, I really appreciate that. And then, yes, they said, oh, your name is too hard to pronounce. We'll call you Nadia S. And I wasn't annoyed. I was actually really embracing that because then I realized, wow, this is the opportunity just to really make it personal, to make it about me as an individual in this new environment. But what can I learn in this environment? And what is it that makes the Texans tick, you know, and for me, being in Texas was truly a cultural experience. I've never seen anything like it. Yes, I grew up in Innsbruck, I grew up in Tyrol, and you know, we're 20 minutes from the Italian border, we're 30 minutes from the Swiss border, we're 20 minutes from the German border. So you're continuously exposed to different cultures, and you know, you're used to that growing up in Europe. And you know, and when I grew up, and this is something you probably were never exposed to, but we had different currencies, you know, and different languages, and you just spoke the different language. You made the effort to speak the different language, you know, you made the effort to really understand the history. And I think that's really the trick of going into a new country to know as much as possible about that country and know the history, know the heritage, know the culture, and respect it. Be respectful towards it, you know? Otherwise, why bother? Going, had a French roommate initially at SMU. She was so dismissive of the Texans. I'm like, why are you here? And I actually asked to have a change of roommates. I ended up moving into a dorm with only Texans, and it was amazing. You know, and this is also, this is at least, what I teach my children or, say to my children, wherever they go, you gotta get down to the essence of where you are. Uh, Look at the no local newspapers, go to the local museum and find out about the culture and the heritage and respect that. And, actually, it means a lot for me. Sebastian actually mentioned that because we are in a situation nowadays where there's so much immigration. And there, to me, a big issue is when the immigrants do not respect the country that is embracing them and taking them in. It's
Totally.
wrong, you know,
And
and
also kind of forgetting from where they come from. And it's sometimes a problem that happens in a specific with the people that come from Mexico to the US, that first they don't know from where they belong because they are raised by parents that were born in Mexico, but they are being raised from the US, but they feel kind of like this thing that they do not belong to either of them. And they don't
really,
respect either of them.
hmm yeah,
That's also,
that's
you have lived an experience in many countries. How
mhm.
how was facing to a different culture and how was like adjusting everything to a different culture and a new country every time you move?
Wonderful. So another way to really understand a culture is actually to try to learn the language. Because knowing the language actually is knowing a culture. So when I was in Hong Kong, um, I noticed in the office there were quite a few misunderstandings within the colleagues, and well, Caucasian mainly towards China. And so then I actually learned Mandarin in Hong Kong, despite the fact, yes, they speak Cantonese in Hong Kong, but I didn't know that Chinese has no tense.
No
There
tense.
is no future tense, no present tense, no conditional, and so on. There is, I mean, sorry, there's no past tense, there's no future tense, there's only the present tense. So when a Chinese colleague would say to another Australian colleague, I send the fax. Well, what does that mean? You sent the fax yesterday, or you're going to send the fax tomorrow, or, you know,
When
so but now I just realized, oh my gosh, wait. So we just need to clarify. Let me ask a few more questions. But I wouldn't have asked more questions had I not realized there is no tense in Mandarin, you know? So, but I also think so really knowing the language is knowing a culture. So certainly wherever I've lived, I've tried to learn the language, and I've tried to learn Mandarin. I can't say I speak Mandarin. I've tried to learn the language, and it's a beautiful language, actually. And that's another thing, when you don't, like Mandarin, for example, can seem so foreign and distant. But when you learn the language, you suddenly you start understanding what people are saying, and you can converse a little bit. And when I was based in Hong Kong, I had to go to China quite often to visit various different factories. And this was in the late 90s when I mean, were not a lot of Caucasians there. And I just remember the Chinese would be so appreciative if I would just say hello to them in Mandarin or thank you. I mean, it was such a door opener, and it was definitely a sign from me to them of my respect to them. And it just definitely broke down barriers, or wherever I go and I encounter Chinese, whether it's LA, for example, I just, and if it's the cleaning staff, I make the effort to say hello in Mandarin, and the response you get is just such an appreciation. Or also, if I encounter anyone from Mexico, South America, wherever and whoever, I always try to at least say the hello and how are you, and it's an instant bond, and I think just speaking languages or trying to learn languages is incredibly crucial, incredibly important, and today more so than ever, actually, So
how
that,
was your approach in learning a language?
so for example, when I was in Hong Kong, the teacher came to the office.
Okay.
And I've quickly learned I should not practice my Mandarin with the Cantonese taxi driver because the Cantonese and the Mandarins didn't get on. So I literally had to go to China to practice my Chinese. No, and you just have to practice. You have to practice. You have to, um, watch
Repetitions. It's a
television.
muscle.
Yes, absolutely, completely, totally.
Nadia, you were the first woman in your family, in being at the board at the family brand. You were the first woman in the Swarovski board. What was going through your mind on day one of that boardroom seat? What was your mission? How did it felt? Remember, go back to that day. How was it?
It was, I felt, okay, I reached the mountaintop and the climb was hard. And it was very interesting, different people's reactions to being on the board. And I had to be very clear about why I'm on the board because a lot of people see being on the board or being at the top, it's about their power. They associate that achievement as personal power. And for me, it was definitely about an achievement of being in a position from which I can impact positive change and, in particular, empower people below me. So it was not about ever my personal power, It was about, oh, like I wouldn't, it was just
Lifting
really about
others.
being, yeah. And I have to say, Sebastian, it was so much easier to impact change from above. That is for sure. And so I think anyone in your generation, the younger generation who wants to be a leader, it is really great to crawl up to the top, to make it up there in order to have positive impact. And certainly in terms of business, in terms of strategy, and then also in terms of the human element, it's a wonderful position to have that impact. And so while I was working at Swarovski really initially in business to business, I was, my mission was to make that name Swarovski a known name. And I did want to reintroduce the fashion industry to Swarovski crystal as a very creative ingredient within the fashion industry, within the jewelry industry, within architecture and design. So this is what eventually in my job brought me between New York and London and Paris and Milan. And I set up these business to business offices called creative service centers where people could come and, look at the crystal and then eventually realize how impactful the use of crystal in their work can be to their own designs. Um, to eventually then also starting two luxury brands one called Atelier Swarovski, one called Crystal Palace. So Atelier Swarovski was our haute couture fashion jewelry brand, where we invited various different fashion designers to create their jewelry line, whether it was Victor and Wolf or Zaha Hadid or Karl Lagerfeld. Um, and then Crystal Palace was all about chandeliers. I asked many renowned designers to reinvent the chandelier, like Zaha Hadid or John Pawson. And all of that had a huge impact on branding, but also in terms of our sales. Suddenly the fashion industry woke up. The minute we worked with an Alexander McQueen, they realized, wow, this is really amazing material. If Alexander McQueen is using it, we should be using it. So it had a huge impact on sales. Same thing within our chandelier department. But what I meant to say is, so the work that I've done had a financial impact, it had a branding impact, and then eventually I got on the board, and suddenly it was about, okay, what else can we do besides having this business impact? And this is really when I when I created Swarovski's sustainability department. And sustainability, I really use the UN SDG, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 18 of them, which vary from really nature-related topics to human-related topics, human rights-related topics, and equality. So this is really kind of the lens that I started to put on once I was in that position of greater seniority. How can one have a more human impact? So from that point of view, I've developed the sustainability department and the Swarovski Foundation, and to me, suddenly it was a matter of becoming, really embracing governance embracing that corporate governance, but also embracing that social governance, and how, as a large corporation as Swarovski, we can have a positive social impact, and so often social impact or corporate and social impact can be had not just financially, but also through the network. So Swarovski, for example, it had about 180 different offices. We had 32,000 employees when I was there. So if you think about the messaging you give to your
A
30,000
lot.
and how they then bring that message out to their families or their communities, you have impact through sheer communication.
You have an amazing story that you told me the other day. It's the anecdote about Alexander McQueen. It was like you told me that your grandfather always shared stories to you of working with people like Coco Chanel, with people like Coco Chanel, Christian Dior, working
Yeah.
with, and you saw that you were in the same room as Valentino and working with these amazing heritage brands. And you say like, okay, now that I'm here, I would try to find my equivalent of Christian Dior. And who was that? The one and only Alexander McQueen. How was how did you build that, and how was working with Alexander McQueen?
No, and you're right. It was amazing. And yes, I should mention here that I was working in New York City. So after I left Gagosian Gallery, I worked really in fashion PR. I worked for a woman called Eleanor Lambert, and she was 90 at the time. And Eleanor Lambert was considered the doyenne of American public relations for fashion. And I have to say, on day one, she's like, okay, you can clean my files. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have an art history degree. I wasn't a Gagosian gallery, but okay, okay, fine, I'll clean your files. So I went to clean her files and I opened these different filing cabinets and it was amazing. There were like these handwritten notes by the Duke and Duchess of Windsor to Eleanor Lambert, by Jackie O to Eleanor Lambert. I mean, and for me, it was like diving into this incredible archive. I mean, actually, I think she did that on purpose to just like excite me and it was amazing. And at that time, still people didn't really know too much about Swarovski, but she certainly appreciated Swarovski because she knew that yes, actually Chanel used to work with Swarovski on a business to business side. So she gave me all these European clients to work with. And so here I was in New York City representing these European family businesses in communication. So whether it was the Missoni family or Trussardi or Valentino, and I thought this was my aha moment to work at Swarovski. I thought, my gosh, I actually also do have a European family business with its roots in fashion, but nobody knows about it. And that, Sebastian, was when these stories that my grandfather told me about who he worked with really kind of knocked on my subconscious and said, you got to go and do the same thing. Go find the equivalent of Christian Dior. And so I looked around and I realized, there were quite a few established fashion designers that were not interested in working with Swarovski crystal. And I thought maybe the young guard has a different approach and they have a great mindedness to working with different materials. And Alexander McQueen popped up because he also had no financing. He was so poor. He would walk the beach on at Brighton and picked up different materials like plastics or glass or stone or feathers or old washed up pool furniture and used these materials in his clothes. So when I said, "Would you like to work with crystals?" Yes.
His
And
eyes.
yeah, was, what it needs to be an exchange. We give you the product and some financial support for the shows, but we want your creativity. And boy, did he give us his creativity. It was amazing.
How old was he?
So he was quite young. He must have been 30 in his, yeah, late 20s, early 30s. Incredibly shy person, but you could tell when you were talking to him, when we showed him the product, the brain was just going. There. He instantly, in the minute also, and this was then an equation that I loved seeing, and that's why I created these offices, called creative service centers. The minute designers actually touched the crystal, they went off. the creativity kicked in. You know, I could talk what I wanted to talk. They didn't hear me anymore. You know. But so he had some amazing shows in London, but also in New York, and it had huge resonance. And I have to say, he just endorsed our product so much, which also resulted years later in Swarovski's sponsorship of his museum exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum of his show Savage Beauty. And I think at that time that was the second fashion exhibition that the V&A had. And at the time, museums didn't really have fashion exhibitions. Now it seems normal, but back then, because fashion wasn't really considered art. But yes, actually, fashion is art. It is so artistic. It does deserve to be in a museum because so often it is a reflection of the zeitgeist, just as portraiture is a reflection of the zeitgeist, you know? Um, and he just broke through so many barriers in terms of his creativity. And he was copied in so many ways, whether it's his style, whether it's the use of crystal, thank you very much, you know. And we certainly saw a huge impact in our sales after having worked with him. We saw an impact in our reputation, because people would be looking at our consumer product, which were the figurines, and then suddenly they looked at our reputation from a business to business side. And suddenly we were associated with McQueen, which is a lot more elevated. And in a sense, Swarovski almost seems schizophrenic. It's like, in one hand, we're doing these crystal figurines, and suddenly we're like cool, cutting edge within fashion. But that's okay. And that's where storytelling comes into place. It's so important from a marketing point of view to tell a story and to explain why. Well, it's the same product. The crystal is cut, it can be, crafted into a figurine, or it can be crafted to be a product within fashion. Or then Swarovski has one more business division, which is our binocular division, which
Wow,
a lot of people don't know it, and the ones that know it are kind of confused. Why is Swarovski making binoculars? Well, the prisms inside the binoculars are
makes
made of
sense.
crystal. So you just have to educate your consumer and tell the consumer why. And it's okay to have different customers, with the same ingredient, as long as you explain the product very logically. Um, so it was an adventure, and that just, the floodgates opened once we worked with Alexander McQueen. The tables turned. Suddenly, people wanted to talk to me because I tell you, I went and knocked on the door of these various different designers. They don't want to talk to me. They're like, "What? You do these I'm not interested." I'm like, yes, but, and then suddenly we could, suddenly I had to hire all these people and, the rest is history, so to speak. The rest is history. But it was an amazing journey, and it was a journey of persistence. And it was a journey and even people within the organization didn't believe that this could be doable. They
How
laughed.
many? And you were already on the board, and they were telling you
Well,
no.
at that point, I was not on the board yet. I had to convince the board to give me the financing to create these various different offices in the different fashion centers. But the minute they saw the money come in, they're like, wow, okay, maybe there's something to it. And yeah,
from
it's
from where does that creativity came up? Because okay, at that point you were carrying the last name, but the
mhm,
power wasn't on you, was on the board and on the top of the brand. How
mhm.
was your approach of like not being no like not being entitled or attached to anything and knowing that to go at the top you also had to hustle your way in even though you were carrying the last name.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, Sebastian, had I been my father's son, things would have been different in terms of the acknowledgement within the organization and within the family. However, had I been my father's son, I probably wouldn't have been interested in talking to a fashion designer called Alexander McQueen. And I think I mentioned it last time. So, however, my father is very embracing. My father's always been incredibly embracing of my sister and me. He took us hunting, he took us shooting, we had to go to the factory with him on the weekend. We had to go to the steam engine museum with him on the weekends. I appreciate that because I therefore like manufacturing plants. I want to understand how things are made and I want to understand who is making the product. And it's really important to know how the people making products in factories are treated. The better these people are treated, the better the product is. You know, they have, and you can feel it, and it's something you can't quantify. It is very ethereal, it's very spiritual,
Like a
but
touch.
it is there, absolutely. But no, I was, also very much encouraged by my American grandfather, who was Top Gun in the US Navy. He was a
Wow.
fighter pilot during World War II. And while I had to fight my way in the Austrian family, my American grandfather would always say, "Oh, you should go to Annapolis. You should become a fighter pilot." And I just thought, thanks, grandfather. That respect to think that I could be a fighter pilot, which is really associated with really a more male male environment, you know.
How was
Um,
were they very strict? Like the whole family was like super strict towards like hardworking and all these, yeah, like this culture of always working, always pursuing, and always achieving high and great things.
um, yes, maybe in the previous generations. I have to say, at least my side of the family is incredibly industrious, so my side of the family has always been in charge of manufacturing, and on the other sides of the family, we're doing marketing and finance. But I certainly come from an extremely hardworking side of the family, and but also incredibly passionate and proud. That was the driver, the passion and the pride. Um, and you know, and the sense of accountability and responsibility. So being one of the biggest employers in our region, you care for your factory workers, you care for your people, but also you care for the planet, especially as an industrialist, So Swarovski has always invested a lot of money in our research and development, and um, so that was, so that hard work was just it didn't seem like hard work. It was just part of the program, so to speak. And I think
And
I've inherited the pride, let's put it this way. And, if you're doing something, you might as well do it really well. So, for example, Swarovski has a really strict quality control. Not one crystal leaves the factory with a scratch on it or a bubble in it. I think a lot of other companies don't care as we do. I mean, it's our pride. Your last name is on the door, so you make sure that the product is perfect
perfect.
for the consumer, and I think that's totally ethical and that's totally correct.
Totally. And you're a woman of a lot of interests and a lot of passions, as you mentioned. You love we talked about art last time we talked. You love hiking, you love outdoors, you love fashion. And there is another one that you talked a little bit like 10 minutes ago, that is also architecture, that one of your mentors and friends was Zaha Hadid. How
Yeah.
was being teach and learning from each other? Because you were showing her the all the jewel, like the all the crystals, or how to work with them and how to use them as inspiration. And you were also learning from her like architecture and the way she saw the world.
Yeah, totally. And that was amazing. So every time we worked with somebody for the Crystal Palace, Swarovski Crystal Palace project, it was really about pushing the boundaries of creativity, not just for Swarovski, but also for the architect, him or herself. So in the case of Zaha, we used a new technology called side glow fiber. So she took the crystals and strung them on this side glow fiber, which was a new development at the time. It glued sideways. So the crystal on top of it would glow. And then she strung it up. And so you had these glowing strands, but then she molded these strands. It was an incredible tension. I think the tension that she created was 5 tons of just some strings of wire with this thing. I mean, it was unbelievable. And we had an installation in Milan at the furniture fair with that piece, and people would just come in and stop because they could feel the energy of it. So all the engineers at Swarovski were excited because they actually had to make the diameter inside bigger so we
Okay.
could string the crystal on this fiber. And of course, Zaha's team was excited because they've never done anything like it. So this is just from a product point of view. But then from a personal point of view, Zaha would just tell me stories of, at her time, being the only female in the AA, which is the Architecture Academy in London, which is, top academy in the world. And she definitely was among male architects who almost ridiculed her for her style, which is very zoomorphic
Mhm.
and which now almost has become a normal style. We see a lot of modern architecture in the Middle East that could be done by Zaha Hadid. I mean, you could tell they totally copied her, or they were, let's put it this way, inspired by her. And that saying of, the one who laughs loudest. I mean, she definitely was the most successful of all her contemporary students at the AA. I mean, she was so successful. She was so copied. She was so revered. And basically, what she and I talked about is just sticking it out and being strong and not giving up your vision. And don't let other people discourage you or talk you down. And, I think she was an environment where a lot of people just purposefully did want to discourage her. Oh, yes. And then, of course, she was Iraqi. She was an Iraqi female in London. So she had that cultural element also to deal with. Um, but her wonderful intentions were very successful.
She's now the reference from exactly all the Middle East. In New York, you find a
Oh,
place inspired by her anytime. Like you see the all the concrete and suddenly something like moving and you know that is from her, that
yeah,
is hers. And
yeah.
that's you have worked with all these amazing people, but you
Mhm.
are also one of them. What's one
Oh,
anecdote you remember of creating something, of an idea that you then turn through? What is the one of the best anecdotes you have?
okay. So, I mean, there's so many. There's so many. And so I will tell you. Okay. So we're working with the architect John Pawson. John Pawson is based in the UK. He's very slick and clean and pure. And I said, John, can you please create a chandelier? He's like, let me think about it. So John came up with a lens. So this lens that he created ended up being the biggest lens Swarovski has ever created. It was basically like this glass dish. And of course, they had to make a few of them that didn't have a bubble in it or a scratch on it. And then if you make glass in that size, it takes maybe a month or two to cool down because glass is made of melted sand, quartz sand.
Okay.
And so they first have to let it cool down and it takes a long time and then they polish it. So it's a really tedious process. But what was wonderful to see is how John interacted with these Tyrolean glass cutters. John doesn't speak German. Some of them don't speak English, but they come together and they talk like this, sign language, and they both appreciate and respect each other so much. And then that glass lens had to sit on a metal structure. So the metal structure was made in Italy. Then we get the Italian language on board. And then we installed this lens in St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And it was amazing to see. So the Italian guys came with their metal piece, the Tyrolean guys came with their crystal, and John Pawson was there. And of course, I was there. And when they put that, so they first unpacked the big lens, the metal piece inside this cantilever staircase, which again was an architectural feat. It's just basically the stair is
Going
built.
up.
Yeah, amazing. And there was a pattern on the floor which was made of marble and it was a black and white star. So they put it in the center of this black and white star. And then out comes the metal and then they put the lens there. And this is the first time that they all actually met each other. And the first time the crystal meets the metal as well. And then there was silence. And these men were crying. I
What?
mean, tears coming because it was so beautiful. It was so amazing. It was such an impact. And What happened if you looked into the lens, you saw the entire ceiling. And to see these men working and communicating with each other for months, suddenly coming together in London, suddenly seeing the vision turning into reality, and suddenly having this totally emotional impact was amazing.
Wow.
And then after we had that piece there, we actually took it to San Giorgio di Maggiore in Venice, and we installed it again in the center of the cathedral. And all the priests came, and I said to the priest, and they were just so excited because as you looked down, you saw everything above. And there was such a spirituality about this. As you look down into your soul, you suddenly see the heavens, you know? So such a humble connotation. But in any case, I said to the priest, isn't this magical? And he said, no, Nadia, non è magicale, eso è espirituale.
Wow.
You know, and he said, this is spiritual. And when you know that the product that you're creating is really having such an impact on the soul, that's amazing. But again, there were amazing souls involved in creating it, you know. So that's how I would measure the success. And then inevitably, you know, when we do this kind of also with smaller products, whenever there was this incredible intention, the product would sell really well, you know,
With
because the
intention.
intention and purpose, you know. So
And
this
you
is,
also has an amazing story. So formula was intention, it's amazing story, and amazing quality.
yeah, yeah,
That's amazing. And
yeah.
you have been a leader yourself of all these teams. How how is your work ethic? I'm very curious about this because there are not little projects. There are projects that influence and involve a lot of not only employees, manufacturer, like there are a lot of things going on through your
Yeah,
leadership. So
yeah, yeah.
how's your approach on leadership?
Oh, well, gosh, you know, it's important to have a good team. First of all, it's important to have a good team. And for me, it's been really interesting to see how the different industries work. So architecture is amazing because there it's all about 150% precision. You know, it's not sloppy work, it's so precise. And so it's actually really easy to work with architects because of that. Fashion industry is different. Fashion is about fabric, it's fluid, and that's exactly how the people are too. But we need precision to get the job done, you know. Um, I think good leadership really boils down to good communication, to be absolutely clear about the goals in the first place. What I think is really important is accountability. Everyone needs to have a sound sense of accountability. I have to say, I do get incredibly frustrated if I have team members that don't have that sense of accountability.
Mhm.
You know, it's really unfair to everyone on the team, and that saying that the company is only as strong as the weakest link is so true. And I've said that so many times it's really wild. You know, it's really unfair for the sheep to have grown his hair or her hair, for the mills then to make yarn out of it and then fabric out of it, and then the manufacturer to make the garment out of it, the team to take photos of the garment. If then one person in the social media team doesn't upload it at the time it needs to be uploaded, it's
Yeah.
letting everyone down. I mean, that's just one really superficial example, but you know, I think the team leader needs to ensure that the individual team members understand their importance and their role and responsibility and accountability.
You have this new venture just in really wild, and not so long ago I was telling that you love hiking and you love outdoors as well, and this matches perfectly with these two passions of yours. So you have this kind of another aha moment. Yeah, you're gonna tell me where it was. I don't remember if it was in Hong Kong when you saw all the people working in an terrible workplace. Like it opened your eyes. how was that experience of working watching the realities of this industry in some parts of it, and how are you doing it with this sustainability thing that we're gonna enter to in a bit in really wild clothing?
Yeah. No, and I have to say, it was really eye-opening to see these manufacturing plants in China and see how people were treated then. And it just made me realize, wow, our manufacturing plant in Austria is amazing. And this is, again, speaks so much for family businesses because, these people are helping you make your vision reality, and my great-great-grandfather, for example, he treated Swarovski's factory workers so well. He created a canteen for them, he created a housing plan for them, he created a gardening club, a football club, a music club. They were really well taken care of. But there's a difference between Austria and China. Um, and then on to really wild, I just really appreciate craftspeople. I mean, you can say factory worker slash craftspeople, and it's amazing. I went into one of the tweed factories and there was a woman who was my age and she's been working in the factory for 30 years. And you know what? She was so proud. She was so happy. She was so excited. She pulled out this filing cabinet with all the different colors and everything that she's been responsible for. And, you know, that was amazing. And you can feel it in the fabric that that company makes. They're called Loch Karen. And, these people work in there because their parents might have worked in there or their grandparents worked in there, and they take on that type of job with pride. And it's those people we want to celebrate. Not everyone can be a rock or should be a rocket scientist, Not everyone should go to graduate school. We are so lucky to have these people who are fantastic with their hands. They're so important. So this is just that's why I like to see how the working conditions are. I like to see who's involved, what's going on. And the one thing that really disappoints me very much, and I guess I can be open about this, is how these factory workers in Scotland were saying that the Labour government isn't helping them at all, which was, I was shocked to hear that. Because, for example, Austria is a very socialistic country, and these factory workers get so many benefits from the government. And I'm so shocked to hear that the Labour government is not giving those. And they're also not giving the benefits to the farmers. You need factory
Mhm.
workers, you need farmers.
Yeah, you
And
need everyone.
but that is, I think, because the politicians don't understand factory work, they don't understand farming. They're just incredibly bureaucratic.
And
And
you have been working for sustainability also a long time. We were talking about that you worked in the Nature Conservancy European Board, and you are super into sustainability in this project in Really Wild, and also with the Swarovski Foundation. So,
Mhm.
how how when you arrived, how was the scene, and how is it now that you have been in it a bit of time?
So when I was really when I started Swarovski Sustainability Department, back then they used the terminology CSR, and then now it's called sustainability. So it was such a new concept worldwide, the name kept on changing. But and I think CSR people didn't know what that meant, or what sustainability. So I think in the meantime now more and more people know about it. Also, people didn't know about the UN SDGs. They're like, come again, what are you talking about? What UN SDG? They thought I'm talking about something else that sounds familiar or similar. Um, no, I think there's a lot more awareness. I think especially with the young generation, there is, we see employees that ask for these sustainability reports. Again, nobody knew what a sustainability report was. I managed to get the first sustainability report published of Swarovski. Um, and it's just a wonderful way to kind of keep tabs on yourself, to have that transparency within the organization, but also to be able to share that information externally is so important. And I think it's a wonderful goal and milestone to set as any corporation to set for yourself. Um, so yes, there's greater awareness of it. Now it's being taught at universities. I mean, that just so did not exist. You have courses in them, you have majors in them, which is fantastic. My son, for example, is studying conservation together with finance at Duke University because, so often those two must go hand in hand. It needs financial support to be able to be sustainable. So I think that's good. That's brand new, new on the horizon. So I think it's great that there's more awareness nowadays, and that's what will help the world become more, sustainable and aware.
100%. And those, the 18 goals of, it's a key point. And now I took it in college, and all of them, in most of my classes, it was like, okay, design a plan or a business, but you have to take into account at least three of these. Like,
Yeah.
it has to help to build three or five of these, and it's great that now in the school everybody is like having this acknowledged to build business in the future with this purpose of sustainability. Not because we are not watching the consequences yet, but the bad ones. But we're watching it a little bit with the climate change and all this stuff as well. It's
Hmm.
also super important.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to start closing. And what is something? What would be your advice for the new leaders that are going to appear in the future, not only in fashion in this type of industries, but also in the new ones like with AI? All the companies are going to have less people, but they have to be more efficient. What is one advice you would give to all the leaders, CEOs, and young entrepreneurs on how to lead a team to take them to any goal? It can be smaller or it can be big as the one you just told us.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I have to say, in terms of AI, for example, it's really good. I mean, we have to embrace it. If we don't embrace it, we're left behind. So we need to embrace it, and we need to use it for the good of the company and the good of mankind. You know, I think it's amazing that we have these kind of filters within AI. The positive filter, that's good news, I have to say. Um, I can't help but think we must embrace the human element. We must embrace the social element. We all know that depression, suicide is on the rise with a certain generation. Is it because that generation had more exposure to social media or just to the internet in general? Um, I think nothing can replace human interaction. So, how, as a company, can you connect people? I would like to give you an example. I went to see the new JP Morgan office in New York. Amazing. It's amazing. Actually, it has created so many beautiful gathering places, So you can tell they have really taken that into consideration. They have a gym, they have a spa, they have a hairdresser, taking these kind of yoga, meditation, um, amazing food court, you can tell that they are taking human care of their employees. And I think, I mean, obviously it's well thought out leadership there on behalf of JP Morgan, to ensure that the employees come together, enjoy the culture. It's important. I mean, for me, that's what I'm trying to do at Really Wild. I want to have the flexibility for people to work from home, but I also want people to come to the office and feel the culture and come together. Is it the Christmas party? Is it the whatever, after drinks, after work drinks, I think that's just to strike that balance from an employer point of view, but then also from a company point of view. I think every product is presents the opportunity to talk about a value. So what's the value that one is talking about? And I'm assuming it's just a positive value, unless you're in the gun industry. Um, you know, and yeah, as a
through
leader,
through
yeah.
your career, you have also been like entrepreneur. What we already saw and we already chat about what happens when things go right, but what was your monologue inside your head inside your head, and how was the process when things were not going right, and you were thinking, what you were telling yourself when things were not going right, and you were like, probably this is not gonna work, or probably this is not the path to walk right now. How how was that thoughts inside your head when things were not going right?
Yeah, it's really hard, especially if you're responsible for something. I mean, for me personally, I can't sleep at night when things go wrong. It's terrible. So I just need to get up, do a review, make an action point list, and then you figure out, okay, I like the saying, another saying, problems are there to be solved. Challenges are there to be overcome. Um, challenges are not a hurtling block, but a stepping stone. But I think it's really important to either overcome the issue, and you gotta gather the troops together, gather the intelligentsia, and then you either fix it or you course correct. Course correction is so important. And then what I also tell the team, nobody's perfect. Also, mistakes happen. But what's absolutely crucial is that honesty is there. So when people are not, or when a team member is not honest about their mistake, it's a double cross. A, they made a mistake, and B, they were dishonest about it. It kind of makes you lose trust very quickly, you know. Um,
And it's what you were saying, like it's key to have accountability for your mistakes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You have, in your experience, in your opinion, we talked, you have been all around the world. What is what has been one of the biggest barriers of like having success outside of your home country, like going to another market and attacking them with a new thing that probably they have never seen? What has been your key or your barrier to be successful in another country?
Well, the key of being successful in countries is to, again, it's almost like what we said earlier. You have to understand the country and you have to understand the culture. And just to give you another example of China, for example, Swarovski was just emerging there in the late 80s, early 90s, which coincided with the time period when the Chinese were dropping their gray Mao suits. Everyone had to wear a gray suit. And so they were allowed to drop, and they were driving around with bicycles. I mean, I remember being in Beijing in 1992, there were bicycles and gray suits. So eventually, the government allowed people to wear their own clothes. And what was really amazing for Swarovski, we provided a very affordable piece of jewelry for women. And we know that apparently jewelry is the easiest way of self-expression for women, especially jewelry that's affordable. And we made sure the jewelry was smaller for the Chinese market or Asian market than for the Caucasian market. I mean, that was a human consideration, you know? Um, and I think that's what's really important. If you want to embrace different markets, you have to know your customer, who are the people, and you're here to make that customer happy and enhance their lives. So is that engineering? Is this design? Customer is king. I mean, the boss that I had in Hong Kong was a Chinese man, but he had a little sign on his desk saying, "Customer is king," and I like that. It's true. It's
would
not his
you
boss, but it's the customer.
would you consider yourself like a more strict leader, or more like a relaxed but still like knowing we have to do this, but I'm a little bit more relaxed? How would you consider your profile of leadership through the years?
Um, Both. I think I must have been born OCD, and that I had to give up when I had three children. There is no way. And maybe the same thing can be said about my leadership style. And, I also think, I don't want to be a kindergarten teacher. I don't want to have to tell people what to do. I don't want to have to micromanage people. So if they give them a task, I expect it to be done. And you know what? It's really disappointing if I look closely and it's not done. That really is a shame. And I don't want to have to be put in, I don't want to have, it's embarrassing to tell adults what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're adults.
So, it's twofold. I want to be I want to be superficial and empower people to let them do what they need to do, but you just got to check every once in a while. And the good employees, you don't even have to go and check on them because they'll tell you what they've done in a very super presentation, completely transparent and like efficient.
Or the new
So,
ideas they could have as well.
yeah, of course, totally.
Before passing to the last two dynamics, now it has been an amazing conversation. Look, I have all my notebook full of leadership notes for the future. Uh, what is an advice you would tell to every woman or young that is hearing you today that is trying to pursue his dream or achieve a goal?
Every woman or young
Every
person,
woman.
every woman. Well, I have to say, women can have it both. Women can be married and pursue motherhood while also having a strong career and having a leadership in the career. I think that process it's a lot easier in the last 10 years. I think the digital age has really supported that. The fact that we can Zoom and don't have to be there in person is amazing. I think there are many more support systems also for young mothers that exist now. There are so many more groups, that existed in my day. Um, so I think the advice is definitely take advantage of that. I think your generation, Sebastian, it's more about 50-50. The men really step in and help, which is amazing, really wonderful. Um, I think it's just really important to also have the support system. I think it's important to have the domestic support system, whether it's a nanny or whether it's a good creche. Um, and then, of course, have the right support system in the office as well. What
Hey,
advice I would really like to give the girls is if you do have a baby, for example, take the time and take maternity leave. I didn't do it. I was out to prove that women can do it all and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so my husband was very supportive. Yes, I had a nanny, but guess who missed out? I did. And suddenly, before I know it, my kids are grown up. And I actually wish I had spent more time with my children when they were babies.
that would be an advice you would give to your younger self?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember I had a conference call with Boston Consulting when my daughter was 2 days old in the hospital. You know what? I should have just told them, really? I think you can wait 1 week. But instead, I wanted to prove I can do it all. And yes, I'm available. Of course, you can do it all. We know we can do it all. But it's a matter of actually respecting a new mother's boundaries. And how dare that person from Boston Consulting even entertained the idea of asking me for a conference call 2 days after I gave birth. So take the well-deserved time. Nothing is so urgent that it can't wait for a day or two. Or guess what? Get a colleague, get your husband, get your wife, get somebody else to step in.
Yeah, sons first. The
So
other
this
the
is
other
what
day I saw a video of it was an actor and she has this little child. His daughter. His daughter is like 5, 6 years old, and the actor is like in his phone, and daughter is like, "Oh, I want to tell you something," but he's like, "Oh, wait for me, like I'm answering an email." So he's already left the room, and then he's like, "Oh no, I don't have anything more." So he realizes that okay, like she's just asking me 1 minute, and he makes up like a deal with his daughter, and he's like, "Whenever you need me or you're telling me something, I'm gonna." Whenever you need me and you're telling me something, I'm gonna stop using my phone. And his daughter, that is 6, 7 years old, says, "Really?" And it was fantastic to see how how that means to a little child. So that's an
totally,
amazing advice.
yeah, absolutely. Because they need to feel heard and seen. I mean, just for their self-esteem, it's amazing, and we don't mean to be dismissive of the children because, yes, there's this email we need to answer. No, these people can wait, especially with somebody from the office, without being disrespectful to them. But yeah, you're shaping somebody's self-confidence, actually.
100%. Nadia, to close everything out, we have two dynamics that I explained the other day, and we're going to explain to the audience. First one is going to be 5 phrases. I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock, and you're going to answer the first thing that comes to your head. And then
Okay.
we're going to open the envelope from last week. This one is from Andy Walsh. Okay, so we're going to have the 5 phrases. We're going to put 1 minute on the clock, and you're going to answer the first thing that comes to your mind. And then we're going to open the envelope. And after the podcast, you're going to make a question for our next guest. And the question can be about anything. It can be about philosophy, about life, about business. And
Perfect.
that's
I can't wait to ask that question. Okay. Who's the next guest on your podcast?
that's also the thing. Neither of the guests know who's asking the person to.
Okay.
So it could sometimes it's, I don't know, from an artist, and then it goes to a businesswoman or to a professor, and sometimes from a professor and it goes to I don't know, an athlete. So it's fun how they see all the questions.
Okay, perfect. Great.
So
All
let's
right.
close first with the rapid fire. You ready?
Ready.
Perfect. A museum everyone needs to go.
A museum I want us to go to. Okay, the Victoria and Albert Museum.
A mentor that changed your life.
Zaha Hadid.
A country everybody has to go once in their life.
Kenya, Africa.
Do you believe in luck?
Yes.
What is something you have learned not long ago?
That I just don't have to be in control of everything.
What does Boston means to you?
Education.
An advice for your younger self?
Be gentle with yourself.
And what would you tell Nadja from 20 years old?
You got this. Keep on going. You got it.
Amazing. Thank you, Nadja. There was amazing responses, and we're gonna hope to the envelope. Okay, I'm gonna put it here in the camera.
Okay, Andy, like Walsh.
It's Andy Walsh. He's the
Okay.
episode 57. Andy Walsh is an entrepreneur from Australia,
Mhm.
and he has 2 exits with his entrepreneurial journeys in New York. So he's from Australia, came to New York, created 2 amazing companies, media companies, and now he's established there. And he asks you, how important is a strong brand strategy for startups or new brands in fashion today?
Clear, very strong. Very strong. You have to know who you are in order to communicate that essence. You need to know the purpose, and you have to have a clear vision of the brand growth, because that creates your blueprint of going forward. But you need to have a very clear understanding. Otherwise, you don't, well, you need to have a clear understanding of yourself in order to best communicate and establish
100%.
a strategy.
I'm taking note of it.
So any startups, they need to take the time for that soul searching. It needs to be a brainstormer, an offsite, if it's a day or 2 days, and you really need to ask yourself those heartfelt questions. And I think once that is clear, it is so much easier to design a product, to design a strategy, to design a future vision. And also, it's really important that all the employees are absolutely clear about what that mission is, because every employee talks to somebody externally as well. They are your ambassadors. So the clearer it is for them, the clearer they can communicate to the external world, and the more the external world gets what it is that you stand for.
100%. Thank you so much, Nadia. Thank you so much for your time. It was amazing. I have a full thing on how to run a business in terms of leadership. Were amazing and exciting stories about Zaha, about Alexander McQueen. About I really thank you for sharing a bit about all your family heritage and also the story of hard work and how you have created one of the contributed to create the creation of one of the most iconic brands in the history of the world. So thanks so much for being here with us today. Anything you want to add tonight?
No, I just want to say I wanted to thank you. I commend you for your enthusiasm, your organization, your drive to have created this platform. Good for you. And this is already you're exemplifying your sense of accountability towards the world for having created a platform to give people a voice to share. So good for you. I cannot wait to see you in 20 years, Sebastian. I'm really excited.
Thank you
It's
so much,
going to be
Nadia.
amazing.
It's gonna be amazing, and I hope we cross paths
We
more
will. We
often.
will. It's a small world. We will. Okay. And I wish you all the best, Sebastian. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here.
Well, people, there you have it. Full interview with Nadja Swarovski. It was an amazing episode. I want you guys to look at my notes, to look at all my papers around the desk. It was a masterclass on leadership, on storytelling, on quality, and also on heritage. The Swarovski brand has been around the world for more than 130 years. So it's a story that involves 5 different generations to keep the dream alive and also to be innovating in such different niches and spaces as you have seen Nadja told us tonight. They are not only in fashion, not only in chandeliers, also going into different parts in architecture. So it's an amazing story. Nadja is an amazing woman, an amazing leader, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as we did making it. Thank you so much for coming to the end. I'll send you a big hug, and we'll see you next Thursday with a new Gumstocks. Have a great night.